1100 hours, June 2nd, 1862. Stockton Road, 1 mile south of Crow Bridge. Major General Daniel Hill had ridden on ahead of Garland's brigade once it had passed through Clanfield. The brigade had been on the road since 0600 and was making good time. On arrival at Crow Bridge, it had been briefed on the situation by Brigadiers Rhodes and Anderson, and having received no intelligence that the 2nd Union column was yet on the West Road, could see the perilous position his men faced at the bridge. He could see easily enough the overwhelming enemy force poised just across the river. It was a good defensive position, but if the enemy made a determined attack, weight of numbers alone would give them victory. At about 10:30, a messenger arrived from Stockton. The 3rd Virginia Cavalry had spotted the leading elements of the Union 6th Corps, currently some 3 miles north of Peytonville and heading south. So far, the intelligence gathered by the numerous spies and sympathizers in and around the Union 6th Corps had proved to be correct. He had little doubt that General Franklin, with a reinforced division, was indeed heading for the West Road Stockton Road Junction. It would certainly reach there around noon. He and Sam Garland's brigade could not reach that location until 1600 at the earliest. The small force in position at the junction would have to hold a vastly superior enemy for the best part of 4 hours. It was a difficult situation. He would have liked to have sent Colonel Anderson with 2 of his infantry regiments to the junction, but if he weakened the defences here, it would make it even easier for the enemy, who would be able to observe the troops leaving and then force the bridge. Even if his forces could halt Franklin at the junction, it would be of little avail if the enemy forced the bridge and then appeared in his rear. Daniel Hill was a worried man as he rejoined Garland's brigade, who were just now leaving the Clanfield Road and heading west for the junction. Noon, June 2nd, 1862. Junction of the West Road Stockton Road. 2nd Division Union 6th Corps arrive at the junction. The Union senior command move up to assess the situation whilst the column halts. Senior commanders with cavalry escort. Looking east along the Stockton Road. Overall view of the Confederate positions. 3rd Virginia Cavalry, who had been scouting, now in position dismounted on the low slopes of the Choke Heights to the left. The Confederate batteries and Cobb's Legion cavalry looked down upon the enemy. The main Confederate defensive line. And an overall view of the battlefield. Left to right, Union 6th Corps Commander Brigadier General William B. Franklin, 2nd Division Commander Brigadier General William F. Smith, and 1st Brigade 2nd Division Commander Brigadier General Winfield Hancock. The 5th U.S. Cavalry providing escort.
Well, Bill, what do you make of it? General Franklin was speaking to 2nd Division Commander Brigadier General Smith. Bill lowered his binoculars before answering. I reckon we need to clear those rebel batteries off that bluff on what will be our right flank. They will cause corners to any troops advancing down the road to face the main enemy defensive line. There appears to be a manageable route up the western slope for infantry to assault the guns. The same goes for those enemy troops on the high ground to our left flank. He paused to inspect the ground on that flank. Once again, there appears to be a practical route up the western slope. My thoughts exactly, replied General Hill. The high ground on both sides of the road, once captured, will give us a huge advantage. We would be able to pour down musketry on the enemy line. It might be impossible for your artillery to depress their barrels enough on this left flank, but perfect over there on the right. If the enemy is forced to withdraw east along the road, they will be hit by artillery fire from both flanks. Bill Smith looked across to Brigadier Hancock. Your boys of 1st Brigade are at the head of the column, Winfield. Can you take on those guns? Winfield smiled, nodded. It will be a pleasure, sir. I can approach the path up the western slope by moving off the road and keeping out of artillery range until we make the attack. He didn't need to mention the fact that the leading regiment would likely take horrendous casualties as they moved up the slope. They all knew that. Bill Smith nodded. I will send word for 2nd Brigade to assault those troops on the left on the lower slopes of Choke Heights. Excellent, gentlemen. When those objectives are achieved, the rest of the division will advance along the road to engage the enemy. Once they are defeated, we can proceed to assist 1st Division at Crow Bridge. Now, gentlemen, to work. General Franklin took and returned the salutes of his officers.
1st Brigade of 2nd Division, led by the 5th US Cavalry, stay out of artillery range as they advance to their objective. 6th Maine, 43rd New York, 49th Pennsylvania, and 5th Wisconsin, as well as A Battery, 5th US Artillery, follow. 1st Brigade 2nd Division's objective is in the distance, as seen from the position of Brigadier General Hancock. 2nd and 3rd Vermont, along with G Battery, 4th US Artillery of 2nd Brigade 2nd Division, begin the climb up the lower reaches of Choke Heights. The remainder of 6th Corps are halted on the road. They will assault the main enemy defensive line in the valley once their flanks are secured. A panoramic view of the whole area looking from the south. A view of the Union deployments from the west side. 12:30, June 2nd, 1862. The West Road, Stockton Road Junction. 1st Brigade of 2nd Division prepared to assault the artillery on Gordon's Bluff. 6th Maine and 43rd New York will lead the assault. The 2 rebel artillery batteries have redeployed to face the oncoming threat. Cobb's Legion cavalry, dismounted, form a 2nd defensive line. 2nd Brigade of 2nd Division make their way up the lower slope of Choke Heights. 2nd and 3rd Vermont prepare to form up for their attack, supported by G Battery, 4th US Artillery. 4th, 5th and 6th Vermont hold fast on the lower slope should they be required. Just the dismounted troopers of 3rd Virginia Cavalry stand in their way. 6th Maine and 43rd New York await the order to advance. 49th Pennsylvania and 5th Wisconsin plus A Battery US Artillery prepare to follow up. The view of Rhett's and French's batteries up on Morgan's Bluff. An aerial view of the opposing forces moving into position. It is going to be a difficult day for the 3rd Virginia Cavalry. The battlefield prior to the flank assault going in. 3rd Brigade of 2nd Division as well as 2nd Brigade of 1st Division wait on the West Road for their turn to assault the main Confederate defensive line on the Stockton Road.
18-year-old Zeb and Danny, privates serving in the 6th Maine, stood shoulder to shoulder with their comrades and nervously looked at the slopes they would have to assault. What awaited at the top was terrifying. Rows of artillery barrels, all pointing as seemed directly at the 2 young men. Both flinched as a cannon opened fire with a roll of thunder, followed by the screams of projectiles, all accompanied by a gale-force wind.
Rhett's and French's batteries fire an opening salvo at the approaching 6th Maine. One of them reducing the Union regiment. The photo's ruined by leaving the dice on the table, but it does show the roll. Each battery at long range rolls a single die, and the 1 is a hit on the infantry.
Zeb and Danny felt their feet crunch in the gravel as they crossed the road at the foot of the slope. Some men had already fallen, but it was difficult for the boys to see as they steadily trudged forward. Another clap of thunder, and more balls tore into the blue ranks, one very close to them. Danny was wide-eyed with fear as he saw two men simply disappear as a ball smashed into their bodies, propelling what remained backwards out of his view.
Once again I ruined the shot by leaving the dice on the table, but as you can see, that one causes a second loss to the 6th Maine.
More projectiles tore through the regiment. This time the boys could see where gaps had appeared in their ranks. Deafened by the noise and shock waves of the enemy guns, they were mercifully spared the sound of men screaming and dying.
Over on the lower slopes of Chalk Heights, 3rd Virginia Cavalry could only watch as 2nd and 3rd Vermont formed into line for an attack. Brigadier W.T. Brooks looks on as his men form up. On this occasion, I did intend to show the die. This is the next salvo fired into the 6th Maine. Now that the target is within 6 cm, each battery has 2 die. A 1 and a 6 is a hit on infantry.
"Come on, Danny," yelled Zeb, trying to make himself heard above the noise and chaos. "A few more yards and we can give them Rebs a taste of their own medicine." Danny couldn't speak, his mouth parched and his eyes stinging from the powder smoke. He just nodded. At that moment, a canister shell from one of Rhett's batteries ensured neither of the boys would ever reach the guns. Their torn, mutilated, and lifeless bodies now cast down under the blood-soaked dirt.
6th Maine break and flee down the side of Morgan's Bluff. Now the 43rd New York will be the target. On the Union left flank, 2nd and 3rd Vermont advance into musket range. Muskets versus carbine fire. The faster firing cavalry weapons attempting to make up for their fewer numbers. 3rd Virginia Cavalry fail to register a hit, but do take losses themselves. Looking down the battlefield from south to north, Generals Franklin and Smith overlook proceedings from the Junction. They see 6th Maine rout, but are confident as 43rd New York continue the advance. 43rd New York unleash a volley up the slope at the enemy and cause a hit to French's battery. They receive a face full of canister in reply, but amazingly suffer just light losses. For the crews of both batteries, they know the time is almost up. They may get in one more salvo before being overrun. However, the 43rd New York are virtually a spent force. 2nd and 3rd Vermont continue their unequal duel with the 3rd Virginia Cavalry, the latter losing more casualties. Confederate gunners abandon their weapons and scramble to the rear of Cobb's Legion Cavalry as 43rd New York reach them. Payback time for the devastation caused to 6th Maine, who can be seen crossing the West Road away from the action. With the enemy artillery now silent, 43rd New York engage Cobb's Legion Cavalry as the surviving gunners mount their limbers and flee to the east. The cavalry suffer in this exchange. With the limbers now away and facing overwhelming odds, Cobb's Legion Cavalry quickly mount up and follow the limbers. Over on the lower slopes of Chalk Heights, 3rd Virginia Cavalry also takes a horse and head east. With both her flanks now open, the colonel in command of the Confederate forces orders withdrawal along the road. The line will reform, however, behind the farmhouse. The Confederates start to fall back to their new positions, looking east along the Stockton road as the rebels fall back to their new position. With the time now 13:30 hours, General Hill, with Garland's brigade, is still some 2.5 hours march away to the east. It was now time for General Franklin to launch an all-out assault on the Stockton road and clear the enemy out of the way.